Ibrahim Traoré, the young captain who rose to power. Once upon a time, in the heart of West Africa, there was a young soldier named Ibrahim Traoré, whose journey would eventually reshape the destiny of an entire nation. Born in 1988 in the humble town of Bondakwi, located in the Boucle du Mouhan region of Burkina Faso, Traoré grew up in a period of great turbulence. His country, known for its proud history of revolution and resilience, was facing new waves of insecurity and political instability. Ibrahim Traoré pursued education with a focused mind. He was known to be quiet, intelligent, and determined. He later attended the University of Ouagadougou, where he studied geology. But his life would not be limited to the academic world. His calling lay elsewhere in service to his country. In 2010, he joined the Burkina Armed Forces. His natural leadership skills and dedication propelled him quickly through the ranks. Traoré was later trained as an officer, specializing in artillery, and he was known among his peers as a disciplined, courageous, and strategic thinker. As the years passed, the security situation in Burkina Faso worsened. The rise of Islamist militant groups in the Sahel region, linked to Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State, plunged the country into chaos. Rural areas were attacked, civilians were displaced, and fear spread across the nation. The government, despite international aid and military support, seemed unable to stem the tide of violence. It was during this dark period that the people's frustrations grew. The leadership of Burkina Faso appeared weak and disconnected from the sufferings of ordinary citizens. In January 2022, a group of soldiers led by Lieutenant Colonel Paul-Henri Sandaogo Damiba staged a coup, overthrowing President Roch-Marc Christian Kabore. They promised to restore security and bring stability. But months later, little had changed. Terrorist attacks increased. Entire towns fell under the control of armed groups. Civilians, soldiers, and local officials cried out for change. The promises made by the new junta remained unfulfilled. Amid this turmoil, Captain Ibrahim Traoré, who was stationed in the north, particularly in areas heavily affected by terrorism, began to rise as a new voice among the soldiers. He and many others saw that the leadership was failing not only the people but also the army itself. Soldiers were often poorly supplied, abandoned on the battlefield, and left to fight an invisible enemy with little support. Traoré, admired for his bravery and his closeness to the troops on the ground, became a symbol of frustration and hope. Along with a group of young officers, he decided that more radical action was necessary. On September 30th, 2022, the world awoke to news from Ouagadougou, the capital of Burkina Faso. Tanks rolled into the streets, gunfire echoed, and the national television station was seized. Later that day, a serious announcement was made. Captain Ibrahim Traoré had taken power, deposing Lieutenant Colonel Damiba. It was a stunning moment. At just 34 years old, Traoré became the youngest head of state not only in Africa but in the world at the time. His face, youthful, stern, and determined, was broadcast across television screens, and his name became known far beyond the borders of his country. But Traoré's rise to power was not about personal ambition, at least that is how he presented it. Speaking to the nation, he emphasized that his primary concern was the survival and liberation of Burkina Faso. He described his leadership as a patriotic movement. He promised a government of integrity, to fight corruption, to listen to the people, and above all, to restore the security of the country. Despite his youth, Traoré moved swiftly. He dissolved the transitional government and promised to organize elections when the security situation allowed. At the same time, he emphasized Burkina Faso's sovereignty, distancing himself from traditional Western allies, particularly France, which had long held influence over its former colony. In the months that followed, Traoré's government took bold steps. He called on citizens to volunteer for a civilian defense force known as the Volunteers for the Defense of the Homeland (VDP), aiming to bolster the army's efforts against terrorism. Thousands of young Burkinabé answered the call, reflecting a wave of nationalistic fervor. Meanwhile, Traoré also sought to strengthen ties with other African countries experiencing similar struggles, such as Mali and Niger, whose new leaders were also military figures who had rejected old colonial ties. Some reports indicated that Traoré was opening new channels of support, including alliances that were not aligned with France or traditional Western powers, but rather with countries like Russia through the controversial Wagner Group. Internationally, reactions to Traoré's takeover were mixed. Some criticized the lack of constitutional process, while others understood the desperate situation Burkina Faso faced. At home, many people cheered him, seeing in him a reflection of their frustrations, their courage, and their desire for dignity. Posters with his image were carried through the streets. Chants of "Vive Traoré" echoed at rallies. However, Traoré also faced immense challenges. Terrorist attacks did not cease overnight. Managing a country ravaged by years of conflict, poverty, and disillusionment was not easy, especially under sanctions and diplomatic pressures from abroad. Nevertheless, Traoré remained firm in his vision, a Burkina Faso free, strong, and secure. He often repeated that his fight was not for fame, power, or money but for the very survival of the Burkina people. He stressed the importance of sovereignty, dignity, and African pride. "We must not continue to be slaves of others," he once said in a speech that resonated deeply with many. As of today, Ibrahim Traoré continues to navigate the difficult path of leadership. He remains a controversial but undeniably powerful figure, embodying the complex dreams and frustrations of a country yearning for peace and justice. His story from a quiet boy in Bondakwi to a captain leading a revolution is still being written. And in Burkina Faso, a new generation watches closely, hoping that the young leader who dared to take the future into his hands will guide them to a better tomorrow. Thank you for listening. Please kindly subscribe to my YouTube channel for more beautiful stories and African tales.